you remember?
He's consistent too.
All right. Good evening, everyone, again. It is time to call to order the regular meeting of the Madison County Board of Commissioners for December. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's now have a moment of silence. The chair will move for the approval of the agenda as submitted. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay. Let's just add it to your section. Thank you, Forrest. Item 5 will be removed. You have submitted the November 7th special minutes, the November 13th regular minutes, and the November 20th special minutes. These were submitted in advance for our review. Are there any deletions or changes to the submitted minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move that all 3 sets of minutes be approved as submitted.
We have a motion to approve all 3 as submitted. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right. We are now down to public comment. I would like to remind our folks that these public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Forrest will be our keeper when he raises his hand. And so we have Miss Elaine Robbins. And Ms. Robbins, if you would speak pretty clearly into the mic, because otherwise it will go out the stream. Okay?
I'll be glad to take direction. So fair enough.
No, but we have some people that don't speak up, and when they go over to watch the video, you can't hear what you're saying.
It's a very rare thing that people tell me I haven't spoken up enough.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Oh, absolutely.
Here just as a heads up, essentially, to let the commissioners know about there is some concern in the community. Several members of the community have seen petitions up and down the highway in support of an asphalt plant. There was scurrying, and folks have found out that there is a just, I keep in a rolling document in which I try and just briefly blurb on our concerns. I've got a copy for everyone of the current version as of yesterday before someone came up with a good idea that I'm going to hand tonight. But it's got tourism, if you like, just taking off after the recession to really come back and do great growth in tourism. I've got also in your little packets some numbers on tourist dollars. They've gone up every year since 2009 from 28 million to about 39 million. So we're really on a roll. We'd like to keep it going. We're concerned about that. And a lot of tourist businesses have expressed concern. I can't really tell you all of the community or not, but enough to be worth for you to hear, I think. A lot of people have health concerns. We have a lot of people who moved here when they were having very bad diagnoses. They came here to enjoy the last little bit of their life when they got better. They'd like to stay that way and they're concerned. We've got a lot of folks in a very short area around the plant who are fragile. My friend was going to speak to that tonight. People are concerned about their employees, concerned about property values. The one I don't have on my nice little typed sheet is someone mentioned, well, there's going to be a lot of traffic going in there. That location is just below the horizon hill when they're worried about crashes. Being behind crashes, sure we don't want to be in any of the accidents. So I know what I'm talking about. I still have the driver discount. Okay, so I would like to hand these out for your education. I just want you to know here, if you wanted to reach out to the group, reach out to me and I'll try to make it happen. We didn't get a lot of people tonight because most of them put out their driveways and I had to come through a couple hours of these because I was afraid I would break it out of that. But I am asking, I'd like you to consider, and I don't think I've done this the correct way, so I'm asking for anyone to help me do it the correct way. Maybe that you consider a letter or a resolution, however you do, to the DAQ, say where it is, and what you're concerned, and if you want us to come back, I'm pretty sure I can show up to support that, so that they would have here. Rather than just what we're saying, because we are concerned. So that's what I want you to get. Hand these to someone or would you
Just
like to?
talk, please.
There is also a sheet that we got from people who are more educated than I am. We went to people out on some of the nasty chemicals that are frequently associated with astronomy. So it's a short note, and I can understand a lot of it. So.
Miss Emily Simtok. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Shante. Yeah.
I'm here to speak to the asphalt plant as well. I know it has a constant asks. But I am a resident on Tulare Branch Road, about under three-quarters of a mile from both location. And all I knew about asphalt plants was from experience smelling them. So I didn't want to kind of make a decision about that. Until I researched. And I spent a lot of time looking at studies and talking to other people who live near places, and everything that I found was scary. important. My neighbors have all been very concerned speaking together about how it's going to affect our children. We love cattle, grass-fed cattle. There's been studies showing that formaldehyde and arsenic has been found as far as 2.17 miles from an asphalt plant emissions. And so what I did here is I created a map using that. I have the study that references the 2.17 miles for a summary of that, where the levels that these toxins have been found on the ground. And I have a map that I have help from somebody making, and it shows what that impacted area would be. If you look at a 2.17 mile radius of people who are impacted, it includes all of downtown.
Hold on a second. I'm getting reports from people who are trying to watch at home that can't hear
Okay.
anyone at the podium. I'm just going to make sure the microphone's on.
Okay.
See, people really do watch this. Yeah.
Let's try that.
Okay. So this is basically a 2.17 mile buffer zone around the plant with the quarry in the center, and it's eye-opening to see just how far the emissions can travel if you're looking at the current studies. So I wanted to give you guys that map just to pass you to keep it. Another thing that I've been reading about is property values around the area being heavily affected. Value up to 56%, and I was able to print out a list that referenced certain parcels and the value before and after the plant was built. This was in Avery County, so I thought that would be interesting. If you look at, there's a 27% drop in all these property values right around. So that's a big loss for people who live close to this location. And then the last thing I wanted to bring is one of the letters I have. These are all personal experience, because I don't have personal experience with it. It's something to me that I just hope is looked at and considered when this is going in, because I'm all for industry and jobs being created, but I just want to research into that. When these plants being put in the near neighborhoods, in near body of water is not good. They're really, there's got to be a better place. I'm not saying no asphalt plant completely, but I'm saying this location is going to affect a lot of people. The Lounsbury nursing home, the senior center, the fairgrounds, they're right across. So, that's going to be something that
go over what's going to be on the agenda for 2019. And some of them will look familiar to you because we had those submitted last year, but they have been pretty much asked for continued funding for these programs. But then there is definitely number 5 is a totally new one. The first one is increased funding for the HCCBG Community Block Grant. And they did fund some last year, but they want to increase that because we have an aging population. As I told you the last time I was here, we're aging more, and by 2034, there's going to be more people 60 years and older than the younger group. So it's important to have services for those folks, for us. That's us. Okay. Number 2 is maintain and increase funding for senior centers. And the senior centers really help get people out of their homes and get them into a social setting so they're not sitting at home depressed. And also they get meals at the senior centers. So it's a very positive program. And I attended the senior program that the Marshall Activity Center did last week. And it was really fantastic. If any were, I know Forrest was there, but it was a crowded room at the Extension Center, and they had the seniors from the Marshall Senior Center, or they're called activity centers now. They were there to perform, and it was just really refreshing. The families came out and really supported it, so it was really a good program. The third one was to again increase funding for the CARE project. And CARE project is, CARE stands for Caregivers Alternatives to Running on Empty. And this is a respite program for folks who have dementia and Alzheimer's. When you can keep folks with that diagnosis in their home and care for them by a family member, it's a much more positive outcome. But it's a very stressful situation. So if there's funding to help these people give them some respite, then that is a very positive thing. So there's asked for increasing funding of that. The other one is to strengthen and fund North Carolina's adult protective services system. As I said, we're an aging population and elderly abuse is on the rise. And as we become older, there's going to be more cases of that. So they're asking for more funding for that program. The last one is new to us, and it's staff to patient ratios in nursing homes. I don't know if any of you have been in a nursing home or had family members in a nursing home. If so, then you know how scarce sometimes the care can be. There's an LPN, an RN, and who are mandated to be there, so many per unit. However, CNAs, the certified nursing assistants, who do the backbone of the work with these patients or residents, that's not mandated in North Carolina. So what we're doing is asking the General Assembly to enact some legislation to establish a mandatory standard of hours per patient daily or minimum staff to patient ratio. So we can maintain staffing at these facilities without overburdening them to the point where we have a staff turnover so frequent, because it is backbreaking work in many situations. So I understand there's lobbyists for nursing, senior nursing, or nursing home residents. The lobbyist will be standing up for the profit and nonprofit organizations, so it'll be a big fight, so to speak. But it is an important factor. Okay. We meet again in March, and the location of the meeting has changed from Chapel Hill to downtown Raleigh now. So, any questions?
Thank you, Jan. We really appreciate you and Sherry working on this.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very proud of what you do.
Thank you for the privilege.
Thank you. Ms. Rhea?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
First thing I have on my agenda for you tonight is the November 2018 financial report. You will see on the statement as of November 30th, Total in our unrestricted bank accounts is 8.8 million. The total unassigned, and unrestricted, which means we could theoretically use it for whatever we want, is 1.1 million. It's awesome. We have hit that revenue corner at this point where our tax revenues are coming in very well, and we will continue to build up that account to carry the next 6 months of the year. You will see of that 1.16 million, 1 million of that belongs to the general fund, and then a little bit to the landfill and a little bit to 911. At this point, we are 41.67% through our budget year, and if you'll turn to page 2, you will see month to date, year to date for the general fund, landfill, and 911. Year to date for the general fund, we are at a 93,000 surplus at this point. Again, we know we have lots of expenses coming in, and that will fluctuate. Overall, our revenues are at 36%, and our expenses are at almost 36% as well. So, considering we're 41% through the year, it's pretty good for expenses, and we're still working on the revenues. We know we were a little behind on revenue collection from the starting point, a couple weeks behind, so we never know when these mortgage companies are going to pay the taxes, whether they pay them in August or we pay them in December, January. We can't predict that a lot of times, and so that becomes a lot of that fluctuation. Any questions on page 2?
Gentlemen.
We can move through here. Everything else is pretty standard what you've seen on the other pages. If you have any other questions on this part of the financials, I'm more than happy to answer.
One question.
Yes, sir.
Any part of the budget concern you? Any one particular part of the budget concern you? Are you comfortable at this percentage we're at now?
I mean, being a budget person, budget always concerns me every day of the week.
No, I understand. I understand.
I think that, we're working hard to collect our taxes and our fees. We are working at managing the expenses that are going out. I know over the next 4 to 6 weeks, Forrest and I will sit down and take a hard look at the budget and kind of gauge where we anticipate to be over the next 6 months. So if we decide that there's some places that are in excess, we'll try to get them to cut back some. And so that's what I anticipate over the next 6 weeks, but there's nothing that jumps at me as alarming saying we're in trouble or anything like that.
Okay. I wanted to hear you say it.
Anyone else? Right.
The second part of the financial statements are the list of checks that have been paid out for the month of November. It's a long list this month, and I have tried to make notes, even on some of the more regular ones, since we do have new commissioners here, what some of these accounts are. It should be right behind the financials.
Got it.
Okay. We have in here one thing that's a little out of the ordinary. We paid some for the QSCB, the school loan. The doors for the Wellness Center middle school were paid out, so you'll see that on here. That doesn't come out of our budget, that comes out of the school loan budget. But it's still on this is a list of every check that's been paid from our accounts. I believe this also has the roll-off truck that the landfill purchased is also included in here as well. Should be on the last page of that, the very top line.
Amazing what one of those things costs.
Yeah.
Yes, and he got a good deal on it. Sam's really good about finding
That actually is a
and
good
asking
deal.
people for a discount. And, so.
All right. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the monthly financial report.
I don't think you have to vote on that, but Forrest can correct me if I'm wrong.
Don't have to. Okay. Would be approved as submitted. Okay. Thank you.
Next thing I have for you is budget amendment number 7. 2 pages here. We have a couple of increase in revenues, there was a grant received by the Cooperative Extension to do some cooler upgrades, so that is included in the revenues. And then there was one other revenue, I gotta find it, sorry.
And that's just to clarify for everybody, that's actually a check from East Fork, is that the right one?
Mhm.
East Fork Pottery, that was part of our Project Clay deal, and
Yes.
that's their recognition of the county's
Mhm.
Okay, good.
effort spent on that.
Thank you.
Very appreciative.
And then the rest of it, we reallocated some expenses. We have some lapsed salaries in a couple of departments that we have reallocated to help cover the cost of some of the carpet at the admin building. And then the other thing to note on here, the sheriff had money in his drug fund last year that was in, that's a restricted bank account, and he has spent some of that money, so that comes out of the fund balance because it was last year's revenues. So we are taking that $34,000 from the fund balance of his restricted money.
Okay.
And then the last thing, the Soil and Water, which is Fund 33, their special fund, they got another grant for a water monitoring of $12,000.
Okay.
Is that the Pigeon River Fund grant?
I'm not exactly sure. They just told me it was water monitoring.
Okay. Any other questions, gentlemen? All right. We will again entertain a motion, this time for the approval of budget amendment number 7, dated December 11, 18.
Make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving budget amendment number 7, please raise your right hand. Okay.
The last thing I have for you gentlemen tonight is the approval of the annual Maximus contract. It should be in your packets. Maximus is a company that does our cost allocation, and we use that study for many things. A lot of it goes towards the DSS and child support, where we can allocate our indirect costs to them as part of their budget. I believe the health department also uses information off that, as well as a couple of other departments. This is a continuing contract that we've had with them for many years. And I believe over the course of the contract, the price has gone up $200, and that was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So I need a vote from you gentlemen to continue on this contract, and then I believe the rest of the that Mandy will get if you guys approve it.
Excuse me.
I have reviewed the contract and made modifications to it and added addendum A, which we add the county contracts, which was approved by the consultant, so I'm satisfied with it as presented.
Okay, as you have amended with Exhibit A. Okay. Okay. And I believe Exhibit B is the standard compensation. Correct. Which appears that is locked in through 2020. Okay.
The addendum is actually an addendum at the end.
You get it?
The one more page after that is your addendum.
Yeah.
That Donnie did right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey. Yeah. All right. Any discussion, gentlemen? The chair will move that we approve the Maximus contract.
Second.
Second. Without discussion, all those in favor raise the right hand. All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ms. Rhea. Mr. Forrest, you're up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it seems that every time Jan Lounsbury is with us, I've just been to something really good that the Senior Center's done. And she was talking about the program that the Marshall Active Living Center did on November 30th. Friday evening with all of our Active Living Center participants singing Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, and had Grandma roll through in her chair, and really good uplifting event that I wish I could have gone through on Monday morning that week, because it was Friday evening. Very good work that Angie Allison, the Senior Center coordinator for the county, organized that along with several others. Edwina Craig, our VSO and in-home aid coordinator, played the piano and really helped pull that together. So it was really good work by that department. Full house up at Cooperative Extension. Hopefully they'll do it again in the future. This was their first time. You wouldn't have known it from being there. So very good work that they did. We had the Fiscal Research Division from the North Carolina General Assembly, a team that handles the agriculture, environment, and natural resources appropriations, the nonpartisan staff that works for the legislature. They were in town on November 14th and visited some of our local manufacturers, met with some of our local government representatives. Really the idea was to get those fiscal staff who are advising members of the General Assembly to actually see how programs that they fund are working on the ground. So with building reuse that's been at Bucci, with 1NC that's been used at Advanced Super Abrasives, Golden Leaf, they fund them, and the Advanced Manufacturing Center at the high school. So it was good to have them here sort of seeing how that works, along with representatives of the North Carolina Department of Commerce. Low-key event for them just to sort of see here and a couple of other counties in the region, but good to have them here and seeing that. The administration building update on that, we were cleared on November 20th after our abatement contractor finished. Basically the building was turned back over to us at that time, and we began carpet installation, we began about a week later. That will be finished, would have been finished, but the snow slowed us down a few days. There are a few more offices to be done later this week. Our maintenance crews have painted the offices, put down baseboard, and we have the tax office and register of deeds set up and ready to move back probably later this week. Get them open, especially the tax office, because it's a busy season, and then we'll get DSS and inspections back in probably next week. Our maintenance folks have done a really good job moving you got to move everything 3 or 4 times so they can put it here and move it back, but they've done a really good job with that. We'll have new carpet. The paint goes a long way in these offices, and I know everyone is anxious to be back home. Appreciate all the employees who have moved at very short notice, and all the departments and their co-workers who welcomed new people to be with them for a few months. So everything should be back to normal after this week, well, after next week, I would say. But that is going okay. And we've just had some snow, and this is just an FYI to talk about good work that our IT department is doing, and just some quick creative thinking, common sense that just hadn't occurred to others on notification for schedule changes for the county, which we rarely do. It's about 3 or 4 times a year that we'll adjust the schedule for the county. We've used a snow hotline for years and put it on the website, and if we know in advance, we'll send it out to department heads. We delayed till 9 o'clock this morning, and the recording didn't work last night. It was probably a user error, but I did record it and listen back to it. But anyway, Jeff Hyder, our Director of Inspections and Zoning, has pointed out, a way to do this, do a mass text or robocall, and he and Phil Presnell, our IT director, worked on that, and I think today it went out to employees for them to sign up so they can receive it, get that a little bit easier. We'll still do the hotline. And the other issue that we run into is how to notify the public if they show up at a collection center, like Monday, we opened at noon, how to tell them, come back at noon, especially if they're there at 11:30, keep your trash, go to the dollar store, do something. We're going to make some signs, and Mandy's already done them for the offices, the paper signs. We'll have to get some permanent signs for those centers with that number on it, telling people, call this number if there's an issue. Very simple, common sense thing. It just hadn't occurred before now, so we'll hopefully be getting that done and moving forward with that. Before I get into surplus property, are there any questions on those or other items?
Thank you.
You have in your packet some surplus property items. You have 2 bids that have been received. One is for lot 122 on Bear River Lodge. We received a $500 bid for that. County has about 10,000. It owed about 10,000 in taxes. We have that much in it, but that's what was owed in taxes. You all have the option of accepting, rejecting, or counter-offering that bid. And if you accept it, what happens is it is then advertised in the newspaper for a 10-day upset period, and that sets that process off. So we've had buildings that we've had these go for months sometimes. Some of them don't get upset. Begins the process. So it's kind of whatever you all would like to do on that, but that's how the process works. The goal generally has been with all these properties, most of these small lots we've acquired for delinquent taxes. The goal is to get them back on the tax rolls, not have the county have to deal with them. There are a few of these, and I think Bear River's one of them, where we pay HOA fees. Every year we pay a couple $100, so it costs us to even own those lots. So if we can get rid of them, that is good.
All right. So we need a motion for lot 122 in Bear River. If we want to accept and therefore set it up for upset, future bid. Do we have a motion? Okay. The chair will move that we accept and set it forth for upset. Do we have a second? Matt?
Yeah, with reservations, I'll second this one.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, but, Mr. Chair, Chairman, is it common for us, since I am relatively new sitting in this chair, for us to accept and put it back on there for that 10-day upset, which I understand that for when it's as low as a $500 one. On this one, is this commonplace for us to do it at this?
It varies. When we have had, Matt, and you.
No, that's okay.
Yep.
We still have the opportunity. We reserve the right to reject the final bid.
Yeah, okay.
So all we're doing is basically approving it to the point. That's why with reservations, I think $500 is way too low personally. But the caveat there is the fact that you have. We've got the ultimate decision at the end.
At the end, yeah.
If there's no upset bids and it's still at $500, we can reject it at that time.
I'm fine with that then, thank you.
And if we
Yes, ma'am.
reject it now, it just dies and we retain it and pay the annual fee.
I believe both these lots have been listed with the realtor for about a year, and if I recall correctly,
That's
this is our
correct.
first bid on this lot, and the other one that you will discuss.
In a year.
In a year.
In a year. Yeah.
Well, that kind of helps my decision, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Mark, any questions? All right. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. Forrest?
The second one is for lot 126 at Bear River. The bid that you have received is the highest bid that was received was $4,025. Similarly, you would, if you accept that, you would start the bidding at that amount.
So for lot 126, the bid is $4,025. Would start the process.
Which is a little more like what I like to see. So I will make the motion that we accept that bid and enter into the upset bid process.
And I will without reservation. Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Discussion, gentlemen? All right. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Okay.
The next 4 items is regarding the listing prices for some items, and it's up to you all. You can either go through each of those or you can defer to a work session. What do y'all prefer to do?
It would be my suggestion, since we have 2 new commissioners who have not been through this process, and we're going to have a work session soon, if it is the consent of the group, that we defer this for further review at our work session, so we can also walk our 2 new commissioners with how the process works.
That's fine with me.
Fine with you, man?
Yeah, I'm cool with
All
that.
right, and that's just by consent of the group, no motion required.
Great, thank you.
And Next, you have personnel, which I'll find here. You have a recommendation from the Health Department for the employment of Beth Wilson as a lab technician.
Forrest,
It's an existing position.
Yes.
Sorry.
I will move that we employ Beth Wilson as a lab technician on the recommendation of the Health Department.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wechtel. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right.
And next, you have a recommendation from the Health Department for the employment of Wendy Owenby as a clinic nurse, also an existing position that's vacant.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move that we hire Wendy Owenby as public health nurse at the Madison County Health Department.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the employment of Wendy Owenby, please raise your right hand.
And then you have a couple of items I'll go through each. A recommendation to employ Jimmy Sprinkle as a permanent part-time van driver for Madison County Transportation, effective December 19th.
We want to do these separately?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we hire Jimmy Sprinkle, or promote, I guess actually we'd be promoting Jimmy Sprinkle to permanent part-time, as a permanent part-time driver at a workload of 27 hours per week, effective December 19th.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right.
And a recommendation from Community Services for the expansion of hours to full-time for Randy Bailey, culinary coordinator for Madison County Community Services, also effective December 19th.
That will matter.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I approve that, or I move that we approve the plan to increase Randy Bailey to a 40-hour work week with those increased hours and responsibility level that goes along with that, effective December 19th, 2018.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Forrest. Being no other business on the regular agenda, the board will recess and return to closed session. All right, thank you, folks.
No, hold, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Legal counsel says we need to adjourn this meeting.
Okay.
And then go back into the recess
We
meeting.
will do that. Thank you, Mr. Counselor. We will adjourn